City and county governments know that getting people off of septic systems and onto sewer systems will help keep the lagoon cleaner, but cost is often the main roadblock. Today, we'll tell you about how one city is partnering with its community groups to get working families connected. Next, on One Lagoon, One Voice.
Hi, I'm Dwayne DeFries, Executive Director of the IRL Council and the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. Welcome to our One Lagoon, One Voice podcast. Each week, myself or one of my staff members will host leaders in the community, scientists along the lagoon, people who know a lot about the system to talk about some of the problems and, most importantly, some of the solutions to solve the Indian River Lagoon's health and make sure it's great for future generations. So let's get the show started and let's talk a little lagoon.
Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast on One Lagoon, One Voice. Today, we're going to talk to a few people in Vero Beach, Florida, who have partnered together to get a really unique, really innovative program going to help working families convert their homes from septic systems to sewer systems. So my guests today are Judy Orcutt from the Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County and Matt Mitz, Director of Public Works for the City of Vero Beach. Welcome, both of you. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Judy, why don't you start? Give us a little bit about who you are and the work of the Clean Water Coalition, who you represent.
Okay. So I'm a Florida girl. I grew up in Winter Park, Florida, back when the lakes were clear and Disney hadn't come there yet. I moved to Vero Beach in 1980 and was fortunate to see the lagoon when it was also clear and had a sandy bottom. So I've had a long history in Florida watching things change. So when my children graduated from high school, it was time for me to get to work to do something about the lagoon. So I started working with a bunch of nonprofits in the area. And by 2016, we decided we needed to start an overarching nonprofit called the Clean Water Coalition to try and bring all the environmental groups together just to focus on the water, the lagoon, and our fresh waters. In 2016, I started on the Indian River Lagoon management team, and I've learned a whole bunch working on the NEP management board. So thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. And Matt, tell us about yourself and the work that you do at the city.
Kathy, thanks for having us, and appreciate everything the Lagoon Council does. It's a great organization, and I can say I've been with the city of Vero Beach for about 15 years, and now the Public Works Director. And I can say my experiences kind of mirror what Judy mentioned. Is I was born and raised here, and saw the lagoon one way when I was a child, and growing up, starting my career, about 15 years ago, the lagoon had a focus. There's always been, I think, a focus since at least the 70s on some of the environmental issues, but just over time, it's risen and the quality has become worse in the water. And I think there's more public desire now to restore the lagoon.
All right, Matt, before we get rolling on the Septic to Sewer program, tell us a little bit about the whole variety of programs that Vero Beach has been working on to reduce pollution. I know you've got a stormwater plan and a utility. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the city of Vero Beach, we're trying to be comprehensive in our approach. And we've done things like we have a deep injection well we installed in the 2010-ish timeframe that got rid of all our discharges from the sewer plant to the lagoon. And from there, we have the STEP program, which we'll talk more in depth about, and a variety of other projects such as pulling water from the Indian River Farms Main Relief Canal to supplement irrigation water. So we're using stormwater that normally would be a pollution loading to the lagoon and turning it into a resource. And then on the stormwater side, where I deal with more in public works, we just completed a stormwater management plan that includes a list of water quality projects. Historically, we are focused on quantity, just trying to prevent homes from flooding. And the focus has now shifted to what can we do to improve water quality? And that's a more challenging issue because the city is developed. There's not a lot of land available. So we looked at the entire city of where we could put projects, and we are implementing a stormwater utility to hopefully continue and pay for these things and get grants from state and federal agencies to leverage our funding we get locally.
And so, Judy, the coalition has been really supportive of all of the work that the city's doing with stormwater, right? You have any thoughts you want to add to that?
We have advocates that are at every city council meeting. And we're really excited that now there's a group of projects that we can kind of like point to for individuals who don't really understand what we're talking about. Then you can point to a project. And when it actually comes online, you can say, see what this project has done. I think that's so important because stormwater is it's just like septic to sewer, out of sight, out of mind. People don't understand that stormwater is the transport system of all the pollution. So we are very supportive. We're so glad they have this plan, and we're very supportive of the stormwater utility. We think it's long past time for us to have this funding available.
Yeah, that's great. And, we've been doing that in our program too. Just every project is progress. And a lot of these programs are really invisible. People just count them as they drive by as another construction project. They don't really know what it's doing. And sometimes we're not really great at telling them what these projects are doing. And so, yeah, it's been a challenge to get that perception that nobody's doing nothing to kind of combat that.
Right.
There's a lot going on and the projects are making a lot of progress. So, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. All right. Turning to the wastewater side of things, Matt, I want to hear about the STEP program that the city has instituted and kind of the things that the city's doing in terms of wastewater and planning for getting everybody off septic and onto sewer. And then we're going to roll into how the coalition is helping you do that with working families and people in our priority communities.
All right. Well, to summarize what the city's done thus far with septic to sewer, as I mentioned, the city had, as most municipalities did, a centralized sewer system. It was pretty conventional. You use gravity to carry sewage from homes to a system, and then there's pump stations scattered throughout the city to pump that effluent and that sewage to a central sewer plant. The city's sewer plant is currently on the Indian River Lagoon at 17th Street and Indian River Boulevard. And the city has been looking to relocate that to our airport property further upland for some time, and that project is underway. As I mentioned, all the municipalities had a permitted right to discharge that effluent once treated to a certain level to the lagoon. And the city stopped that with a deep injection well in the 2010 timeframe. And in addition to that, the city also had, mostly on the Barrier Island, and then also fewer locations on the mainland where, for whatever historical reason, the central sewer was not installed. So these homes would have a well for their water supply or possibly just potable water that was sent to the homes, but not sewer service. So to go back and install a gravity sewer is very expensive. It can be upwards of $40,000 to $60,000 a home now. It's heavy construction. It's very complicated. It tears up the road for a long time. Rob Bolden at the city of Vero Beach has really led the way here historically with the water and sewer department. Rob found a really good idea that I think some other communities have implemented called a STEP, STEP, which stands for Septic Tank Effluent Pump Program. The STEP program is basically we're taking out the traditional septic tank and drain field on the property that pollutes, and we install a relatively small 1.5 or 2.5 inch pressurized pipe that's been run throughout the entire city to serve these properties without sanitary sewer. And it's run along the road in front of their properties. And it was relatively easy to install with directional boring. And because it was a relatively small pipe, it wasn't as intrusive for construction. And we ran that throughout the entire city. So every home in the city that has a septic tank could hook up today if they wanted to sewer. And thus far, it's getting close to 50% since 2015, when the STEP program was initiated, that have hooked up. And that kind of leads us into some of the great work that Judy's group is doing to help. There is a cost for these people to hook up. It's about roughly $15,000, which is certainly not cheap, but it is much cheaper than a traditional impact assessment you would receive from a municipality installing a traditional sewer system. So this program is kind of a win-win. It's relatively cheap for the residents, and it's less expensive than the traditional sewer. And the kind of carrot program the city has is instead of going through the entire city and mandating everybody hooks up today, when it was started in 2015, we said, you can't build any new septic tanks. And once your septic tank fails, you can't get a permit to fix it. So we kind of used a natural order to, if there was someone who wanted to hook up for environmental reasons, just out of, out of the goodness of their heart, they certainly had that ability. But for the homeowners who had a drain field fail, the cost to fix that is getting close to what it costs to hook up to STEP anyway. So it was very cost competitive. So they're doing something environmentally friendly and it's cost effective.
Yeah, that's great. And how did the coalition get involved with trying to get homeowners to hook into sewer?
So in 1990, the county actually passed regulation that required all new subdivisions to provide sewer. So now the challenge is retrofitting the old neighborhoods that were constructed prior to that. For the new homes, the cost to connect is built into the price of the mortgage. But now when you're trying to retrofit these old neighborhoods, it's homeowners who have to have a check. They have to stroke a check to do it. So 7 years ago, when the city started installing the step lines, the Clean Water Coalition, and even prior to that, prior to our being formed, the Indian River Neighborhood Association, along with their lagoon committee, went to every homeowners meeting, and we would always tell the story about how important it was to connect and how the nutrients impact the lagoon. And we'd tell the whole story about seagrass demise and whatever. So we had actually worked pretty closely as like citizen advocates for a long time. And then here we are years later, and we're only at a 47% connection rate. And so on the mainland side are where our oldest neighborhoods are and the lower assessed value of the properties and so forth. It's more of the working community. And we realized that we were never going to get 100% connection rate if somebody didn't figure out a way to help these folks connect who really truly couldn't afford to just write the check. Because the actual cost to connect is about $15,000.
So as your discussions with the city went on, the Economic Opportunities Council, the Land Trust went on, how did you all get together and develop the plan for what y'all wanted to do? Tell us a little bit about the role of each partner and how things kind of rolled out and how you got the city to be okay with things and help you out with that.
So when we started working with the Land Trust, they were particularly interested in putting some money in super high impact areas. They really were interested in lagoon front, but we were more interested in helping the lower income people because we felt like the lagoon front people, when push comes to shove, they can figure out how to pay for it if they need to. So we settled on a neighborhood that's in the mainland of Vero Beach called the Atlantic Boulevard neighborhood. And basically it's close to the airport and it's right along the main relief canal. So that made the Land Trust happy, right along the main relief canal, which leads straight to the lagoon. And it's a neighborhood that has lower property values and it's a working class neighborhood. And we had done some research through United Way, and United Way had an ALICE report that they published in 2023. And the ALICE report indicated that 45% of all the households in Indian River County struggle to pay for basic needs.
And Judy, let me interrupt just for a sec. For our listeners at home who don't know what that means, tell us what ALICE is about.
ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Families. And 45% of all the households in Indian River County do meet those ALICE criteria for struggling to meet their basic needs. If they're struggling to meet their basic needs, they certainly aren't going to be able to write a check for $15,000 to connect. Or if their septic system fails, some of these families we heard were actually paying for a septic company to pump them out, but then they'd have to do it a month later, pump it out again, just to keep functioning. So they were spending a lot of money to just eke along. So the Community Foundation came in to help us with the final little leg of our challenge grant from the land trust. So they were able to help us with $10,000 just to, get us over the edge. And that was wonderful. And so one of the really important partners that we came across, and it took us a while to come across them, and that was the Economic Opportunities Council. The Economic Opportunities Council has a lot of programs that you might be familiar with, Head Start being one of them. But they also have programs that help people if they get in a fix and they need help with their utility bill, that sort of thing. So there are other programs they're working on. And when we met with them and told them what we were trying to come up with, then they said, oh, well, we can help you find those applicants because we deal with those populations all the time because they're coming to us for assistance for other reasons. And so that worked out great. And we don't have to qualify the applicants. The EOC qualifies the applicants and then lets the city know who is financially qualified to meet our criteria, which is, by the way, I don't think I've mentioned the criteria, you have to make less than 300% of the federal poverty level.
That has to be quite a boon to the working families in the area. Have families been lining up to get on board with that?
Well, that's an interesting question because I think these families are a little reluctant. They're a little bit shy about, or, maybe not particularly trusting. They're a little bit afraid. Of course, they don't want to lose their home. And so, they're afraid of these programs. So we do actually do a lot of hand holding. And so does the EOC to convince these families that this is okay. We're here to help you. And I should probably explain first how we do help them. Once they meet the income level of the less than 3 times the federal poverty level, and they also have to be in a homestead exempt piece of property, own the home and have homestead exemption. So then, they go to the EOC, they make a simple phone call, go to the EOC determines that they're qualified. And then the paperwork begins shuffling between the EOC and the city. It's quite a bit of paperwork because part of doing the step system is you have to allow an easement on your property for the equipment to be installed. So it's a lot of technical paperwork so these folks need a lot of explanation. But once they get through the paperwork, fortunately, the city has been very cooperative in this program. And the woman at the city who's actually working with the clients too, she's got a big heart. So she's a great person to work with. And the city has offered their portion of incentives too. So there's a $3,390 connection fee, which the city waives. So the city has been wonderfully cooperative in this program and really supportive. So Matt, why don't you tell people what their incentives are for this program to help us out?
Whenever someone connects to the city's sewer plant, there's typically some kind of upfront capital impact fee. You'll hear the term impact fee or connection fee. And the intent of that fee is to kind of have the customer pay their fair share of the cost of the sewer plant. Utilities have to be fair and equitably assign those costs to the customers, but it is a bit unfair to say double your capacity and then not have those new customers compensate the existing customers for what they've historically paid. So that's kind of the idea of the impact fee. The city doesn't want to leave anybody behind on this. Eventually everybody's going to have to connect. Luckily, the city has a program to get everybody on board. So this is an incentive that it is somewhat discretionary on the city's behalf to waive some of these impact fees because we're the agency. We have, we own our utility. So that gives us some authority to do so. And that's part of the incentive we're offering is that, we can't waive everything. There's capital for the equipment itself. That's a set cost from a vendor to buy a pump, to buy a tank. So, I don't think we offer incentives in that regard, but for other fees that are more discretionary, the city has latitude and our city council has supported that. So that's something we're trying to do to get, the whole community to connect.
That's fantastic. And, I really think that this is kind of a role model for other cities and how to partner with your community to get things done and make sure that everybody can get onto sewer from septic. That's going to be a big help for the lagoon. How do you think about this as being sort of a model for other communities to accomplish getting people onto sewer? Do you think it's been working well? I know you're just kind of at the beginning stages of it, but give us some, lessons learned. If there was another community that wanted to do this and they called you up, what would you tell them? Matt, you could probably take this one.
I can say one thing that we've learned from the STEP program, I think that is a model that other communities can use, is spreading out the load. And with the STEP program, we are going to have a date certain that people have to connect. But when we started it, there was some grants and opportunities for people to have an incentive to connect early. I believe we had grants through St. John's Water Management District to hook up and give those customers some kind of discount for connecting early. So there was a financial incentive. So that took care of the people with means. They had to say, okay, I'm going to save a certain percentage of the cost if I hook up now. And then, as with everything with infrastructure, it's always going to be more expensive in the future. So having that distribution and not forcing everybody to connect at once, because this is what's a deal killer. If you were to go to this community with traditional sewer and say each one of these properties is going to be assessed $40,000 to $60,000, that's going to be on your tax bill for the next 10, 20, 30, whatever loan and financing that the government can get for it, those residents are going to riot and talk to their city council or county commissioner and say, do we have to do this? Is there a mandate? And that's something you're seeing on the other end of the state now with the legislation that's being passed that's saying Florida has to connect by a date certain. And you're going to see pushback from communities saying, we don't have the means. Our residents can't afford to do this. And I think something that Vero can serve as a model is say that it can be done if you look far enough ahead and you have the foresight and will and determination to do it. But if you do the minimum and wait for the state to mandate it, it's going to be expensive. It's not going to be popular. And at the end of the day, we're not going to see the lagoon restored. So I think that's why this model works for the city is not everybody has to pay and connect at once. When your system fails, you're not losing any money. When you built your home, let's say in the 90s, installed that septic tank, paid $20,000, $30,000 for it, you're going to get the entire life out of it. But once it fails, you're not going to get a new one. You're going to get something better. And I think that has helped the community digest a very large pill of the cost of this. And I think that's something that can be used as a model for other communities.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old how do you eat an elephant idea, right? You take one bite at a time. And, spreading those costs out is certainly very much common sense and kind of just makes the whole thing more palatable. Judy, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things that probably makes this work is the fact that the lines are in the ground. And if the lines weren't already in the ground, it would be hard for the Clean Water Coalition to help the residents connect. So it's harder to work in communities where they have to do the infrastructure from the ground up, start with the gravity sewer line or start at the very beginning. So that's where it's a little challenging to work in other areas because there's certainly other neighborhoods that would be this same kind of income level that are going to need just as much assistance as these city of Vero Beach downtown areas. But if the plumbing lines aren't already in the ground, it's hard to help the homeowners.
I think that's a great point, Judy. Like I didn't think about that until you mentioned it is having the lines in place. And that reminded me just kind of, I think we're kind of talking to our audience that maybe already knows what this is, but for people who are not, I don't think I explained how the STEP system works. Basically, we replace a customer's septic tank and drain field with just the vault, the septic tank portion. So their home connects the same way. There's a discharge from the home to some kind of container. And then in that container, we have a pump that uses pressure to pump out to a relatively small line out in the road. That's why gravity sewer, you have a 6 or 8 inch pipe. And since we have a grinder that grinds the material in the customer's sewage and then it has pressure, the pipe doesn't have to be as big. That's why the step system works the way it does. I just wanted to mention that.
So the other additional benefit to these homeowners is the fact that once this tank and pump is put on the owner's property, they have no more maintenance to worry about. The city then maintains it. There's a little alarm on the outside of the house, and if something goes wrong with the system, there's a 24-hour-a-day phone number for them to call. So there's already been 800 and something of these installed in Vero Beach, and they seem to be very reliable. And even in a power outage, the tank is large enough to hold, Matt, you can straighten me out if I'm wrong, but I think it's several days worth of waste before you'd run into a problem. And then the solids that are going to gather in the tank would be then pumped out on a regular basis by the city of Vero Beach. It's all maintained by the city. That's a real advantage to the homeowners. They will have a sewer bill to pay. So that's just a monthly cost, but everybody's going to have a sewer bill to pay.
It seems like a fair price for getting, forever maintenance on your system, though. That's not a bad deal.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the 10-year 0% interest loan is put on the properties. It's a non-ad valorem assessment, similar to, let's say you live on a dirt road and you pave it. Sometimes the residents chip in for that, and that cost goes on their tax bill. So it's a similar capital expense. As Judy mentioned, the city, we're kind of concerned about the septic tank and our pumps and stuff. And that's something, Judy mentioned the reliability is another benefit or model for communities would be that, Rob was able to find the exact tanks, the exact pumps that he thinks are good and reliable and shops them out. And then we buy them in bulk. So we get a decent deal on them and we store them in our warehouse for the plumbers to pick up when they do the installation. So there's the advantage of we have control over the quality. It isn't just a customer buying a pump and then we have to maintain some brand that we don't know of.
Yeah, that's great. It's sort of like one-stop shopping. You buy in bulk, you get the discounts for that. That's great. All right. Well, thank you guys. So appreciative of you coming on to talk about this. I think it's such an innovative program and it's going to do a lot of good for the people in Vero Beach, particularly those in the working communities. I think this is just a terrific, terrific program. I can't wait to hear your next updates, and hopefully we can bring you to a council meeting at some point and get a presentation so you can share that with the whole Lagoon community. So before we sign off, I want to give you both an opportunity to give some closing thoughts if you have them, and let people know how they can find you on the internet or on social media. Judy, you want to go first on that?
Sure, I'll be glad to. And the Clean Water Coalition would certainly welcome donations to help us with this project. We're totally run on donations. And we do, should I mention the grant?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're thrilled to announce the fact that the Indian River Lagoon Council has awarded us with a grant so that we can expand this project in more areas. So by October, I believe the grant will be funded and hopefully do another 30 or so homes. So we're thrilled about that. Private donations are welcome to Clean Water Coalition, P.O. Box 2171, Vero Beach, 32961. And you can look us up on the web at cwcirc.org. But most important, if you know of someone who lives in the city of Vero Beach and is an Alice type of resident, someone who's struggling to meet their basic needs, please tell them to call the Economic Opportunities Council. That's who does the screening for this program. We have funding available. It's going to go on a first come, first served basis. And the two ladies at the EOC that are helping us are Judy and Angela. The phone number is 772-562-4177. And they also have on their website some information about the program. Our website does too, but if you want to look on theirs, you would go to that website, EOCOV, Economic Opportunity Council of Indian River County. So it's EOCOFIRC.net. And they have a program tab, programs, and you tab down and there's a septic tank effluent pump system tab, and you can open that up and it tells you all about the program also. So encourage people to apply.
That's great. And you sent me something this morning that had a QR code on it. If we post that on our website, we can get people to, where does that go? Does that go to the EOC website or to your website?
It goes to the EOC website.
Okay, perfect. So they can go directly to that, and we'll get that posted on our website.
Good. Thank you.
Great. And Matt, why don't you give us your handles and social contacts and all that?
I just wanted to say big thanks to Clean Water Coalition, Indian River Neighborhood Association, and the Lagoon Council. Something you'll hear our city council mention a lot is public-private partnerships. And to get the lagoon cleaned up, it can't just be municipalities and governments. We really need these local organizations that get the resident support and buy-in for these things to be successful. So I just want to say big thanks for that. The city's information, you can find everything at the city's website, www.covb.org, COVB as in City of Vero Beach. And you can find under the Water and Sewer Department, you can find general information of how the STEP program works, the equipment, and a contact number for a water and sewer and utility department that can help get you more information on the mechanics of it. And you can also go to our GIS map gallery that has a STEP system dashboard that shows you how much nutrients your house would remove if you hooked up to STEP. And every house adds up. This is one of our biggest projects in the BMAP program that's going to help reduce nutrients to the lagoon. So we are very proud of it and want to see it continue and blossom.
All right. Well, thanks again to Judy and Matt for coming on today. Very much appreciate it. And it was a great talk.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. We appreciate you and everything the Lagoon Council is doing. Thanks for these programs and the public education.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for having us on. It's been a pleasure. And it's really fun to be able to talk about this program. We're working hard to make it a success. And we appreciate everything the council's doing.
Thank you. If you enjoy these discussions about the IRL, please like and subscribe to this podcast. To learn more about the IRL NEP, how you can get involved, and tips on living lagoon friendly, or to purchase One Lagoon merchandise, visit us at onelagoon.org. Our newly redesigned Indian River Lagoon license plate is also available now at your local tag office. To stay informed about lagoon news and upcoming events, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at One Lagoon. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you next time.